Hey there, commercial construction coffee talk fans. Thanks for chiming in. My name's David Corson. I'm your host. I'm also the publisher and editor of Commercial Construction and Renovation magazine. This is what it used to look like. We're digital now, but I'm breaking out the archives. Oh, this is May, June 2013. Roger Loves, Vice President of Facilities and Construction, Loc Theaters. Another good-looking issue. Let's see what I was doing in the back here. I always like to see what I was doing back in 2013, and 50 years and counting. I was at looks like I was at the NCAA finals in either Philly or Baltimore, watching our DU Pioneers. Probably let's see, that year they lost to Syracuse in the semifinals. The following 14 we lost to Duke, and then at 15 we won our first national championship. So go Pios. But it's always nice to hold it in the magazine, the magazine in the hand, and what we were doing way back when. But now we're digital and getting millions of people hitting our website, consuming content every month. And it's been an amazing journey, going digital. Don't miss the post office. Don't miss the printer. And I've just learned a lot of things over. Our last issue was August of 2021 when we stopped printing the magazine. And I had White Castle, the VP Construction, on with their biggest facility or restaurant that they've built. And haven't looked back since, and I'm not going back either. It's digital's the way to go. And so hope everybody's having a great week. It's hump day today. Beautiful here in the ATL, no humidity, 80 degrees. I mean, it couldn't be nicer in Indian summer here. And the fall's starting to come in. The leaves, our leaves don't fall off until probably November. So, but the leaves are starting to change. And if you never gone to North Georgia, if you come to Georgia, you go up to Helen, Georgia, and it is just beautiful in the fall. It's a nice, if you have a motorcycle, it's a great ride up there. But it's just beautiful here in the South. I couldn't ask for nicer weather. During the summer, it's just hot and humid. It hits you like a 2x4 when you go out into the heat. But the humidity has gone, and now it's just been really, really nice. And we'll take the nice weather, and when it rains, we'll take that too, because we want to keep Lake Lanier full to the brim, because it feeds all of Atlanta and down to Florida and Alabama, and our other Lake Altoona does Tennessee and Mississippi and everything else. So without water, you can't get things done. So it's very, very important. So with that said, today I have a special gentleman. Once again, got a PR piece sent to me. I'm looking at it, and I said, "Oh, I've got to have this person on the show." His name is Captain Bill Toti, and he's a retired captain from the Navy. I like to have athletes on here, and I like to have military people too. And everybody, they've gone into battle. Whether they've done it on the battlefield or on the athletic field, but they make their transition, and with so many people looking for skilled labor out there, and just from an aspect of military personnel, leaving the armed forces and wanting to get into civilian life and business, etc. I love having people like Captain Toti on here, to kind of tell their story, how he made his transition, and how he's actually out there with his main focus on helping military people make the transition. So Captain Toti, or Bill, say hello to our audience out there on Commercial Construction Coffee Talk.
Hey, everybody. I appreciate what you all do. It's important to our country.
Yeah. Listen, we thank you for your service. You were in there for 27 years, correct? Is that right?
Yeah. Wow, that's right.
And Captain Bill just had rotator cuff surgery. So he's just last week. So he's sitting here in a sling. And if any of you have had rotator cuff surgery, it's all about rehab and coming back. And I've had both my ACLs done, but shoulder surgery, it's probably it's one of the toughest things that you can go through, to come back and get that movement, because you got so many different things. Me with ACL, it's carpentry work. They cut your ligament out, they put a new rubber band in with 2 new screws, and boom, you're done. You just got to work your leg and stretch the rubber band to get your mobility back. So I feel your pain. And yeah, my sister had shoulder surgery, and one of my clients just had it. It's just, I just said, do the rehab, because without the rehab, you won't come back. It's not the surgery. The toughest part is the rehab. So
yeah, starting on Monday, David, and I'm not looking forward to it. In the military, we say you have to embrace the suck, and this is going to suck.
Yeah, yeah. No pain, no gain, and it listen, you'll come back. I have complete faith with you, and I'm sending positive thoughts to you, in your shoulder to get better. So Bill, the way we're going to work this, I do our episodes in three parts. You'll tell us your story, where you grew up, if you went to school, if you played any sports or what have you, married, kids. You can tell us about your Navy career, and then how you ended up where you are today and what you're doing. And then we'll talk about lessons learned that you saw over the last 3 years of the roller coaster that we've all gone through. And then you'll leave one positive thought or phrase with our listeners out there in Commercial Construction Coffee Talk. So with that said, the floor is yours. Tell us your story.
Well, I grew up in a small town outside of Youngstown, Ohio. It was a steel town. So I didn't grow up in the construction world. I grew up in the steel world. All of my grandparents, both my grandfathers, worked in the steel mill. Just about everybody in our town did as well. In fact, my first real job, if you don't count the paper route, was sweeping floors in the steel mill. And until I got browbeat by a guy that told me that I was taking a job from somebody who needed to support his family, and then kind of embarrassed me into leaving that job and went to wash dishes in a restaurant instead. But it was an incredible learning experience. Everybody was a laborer in my town. My uncle and my father both went to college. My uncle became after World War II, became a high school teacher, principal. My father, after the Korean War, became a lawyer. And so they broke the mold of working in the steel mills. But I got out at the age of 17 to join the Navy. And so I enlisted just as a regular enlisted man.
How did you choose the Navy over the Army or the Marines or Air Force?
Yeah, I wanted to be an astronaut. And funny story was, at the time I was in high school, John Glenn, one of my heroes, was running for Senate in Ohio. And I decided to work on his campaign and got to meet him when he came to town, and told him, Mr. Glenn, I want to be an astronaut. I know I need to be a pilot to be an astronaut. So I'm going to go to the Air Force Academy. And he probably thought he was being funny. You got to be careful what you say to a 16 or 17-year-old. I can't remember exactly how old I was at the time. And he said, Air Force, don't you know I was a Marine? If you want to be a good pilot and a good astronaut, you need to be a Marine pilot. That's not the Air Force Academy. That's a Naval Academy. And I said, okay. And so, there I go. And so I decided I'm going to go to the Naval Academy. Problem was, it was too late to apply for that year. So I go down to the recruiter's office just to show him how serious I was about this and join the Navy. So figuring I could get into the Naval Academy the year later. Little did I know how low the probability of that happening was. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. And I got really, really lucky. And just as I had planned it, the next year I got accepted into the Naval Academy. It's like, you can't make this stuff up. I was just too stupid to know how unlikely it was that it was going to work out, but it worked out.
Well, listen, timing in business is everything in life, et cetera. And, talking about steel, my family's been in demolition, steel recycling since 1888. And like yourself, I grew up down in the scrap yard and playing in the cranes and, so forth. But outside of Philadelphia in Pottstown, about 15 minutes west of Valley Forge. Anyway, but all the grandsons, when we got our driver's licenses at 16, I had to go into the scrapyard, and I had to work for my Uncle Frank, who was the superintendent, and he was one tough son of a gun. He scared the heck out of me, Uncle Frank, but may he rest in peace. But he was a great guy. I learned so much from him. But I scrapped, used the acetylene torches. I shoveled asbestos. I laid railroad tracks. I did everything. But the most, the thing is that we all had to do it. We didn't have a choice, and if you're a female in my family, they didn't make you do it. But, nowadays they probably would. But back then, that's what I did. And now my cousins two of my cousins that are running the company, we were all born in the same month. They're running the company. It's, fifth generation. And we were doing steel recycling before sustainability was even a word.
Mm.
And like I said, my grandfather was a combat engineer before we got on, you know, underneath Patton in World War II. And you know, I sold my erector set that I grew up with in construction, so I totally get it. And you know what the
Yeah.
best thing is about the military? I tell people, even at, you know, I'm a lacrosse coach and I've done hockey coach with my son all through when he was growing up. But I tell people, look, when you graduate high school and you don't know what you want to do, go join the military. Do your 4 years and whatever. You'll find leadership. They give you 3 meals a day. They make you, they build you up, your character, you know, your confidence, and you make money and you learn a skill. And so when you do go out, and getting back to your book, The Bridge, you know, you can offer something to society. And listen, the military is not for everybody. So I get it, you know, um, so the John Glenn story was classic. You know, hey, I'm going to be a Zoomie out in Colorado Springs, but then you ended up in Annapolis in Maryland, you know, at the Naval Academy, right?
Right. Yeah. I had my uncle's words resonating in my head when John Glenn said that. My uncle was in the army in Korea, combat soldier, you know, Pork Chop Hill and all of that. And I remember him saying, if you go in the military, because this is during Vietnam, right? So there was the draft.
Right.
If you go in the military, make sure you go in the Navy. You'll never have to sleep in the mud.
Yeah.
That was his warning to me, right? Now, it wasn't quite true that I would never have to sleep in the mud, but it's certainly true when I was aboard ship, I wasn't sleeping in the mud. So it all kind of connected and ended up being exactly the right move for me. I ended up going submarines out of Annapolis because my eyes went bad and I couldn't do the astronaut thing. But I had a great career in the Navy, but decided to leave in my mid-40s. So because I really wanted to get into the industry, because I decided if I waited any longer, I'd be too old to make a real transition to a second career, because I wanted a full second career, not just a job out of the military. So that's what got me into the military. I ended up spending 15 years in industry, and culminating in a job as CEO, hence the title of my book, From CO to CEO. So I did have a full second career, but towards the end of that career, I realized that, you know, most transitioning veterans struggle, and it increases their stress level, increases, you know, those that have PTSD, failure to transition just adds to that, you know, real live stress. And here's a real statistic for you: 200,000 people leave the military every year, and of those, greater than 50% quit their first job or are fired from their first job within 2 years of leaving the military. So I realized and saw for myself that something wasn't working for transitioning veterans. And there was, and I tried to figure out what it was. I was hiring a lot of them myself and realized how folks were failing over and over and over again. And also realized the military was part of the problem. As they were training people, as they were leaving the military in what's called transition assistance program, they were teaching them the wrong stuff. And they would leave the military with their head in the wrong space. And that caused them to increase, not decrease, their probability of failure. So I decided I needed to kind of reboot, things for transitioning veterans, write all the lessons down that the military should have been teaching them, but weren't, and just make it available to them to both improve the veterans' probability of success in industry, but also I wrote the book for companies that hire veterans to help understand what the veteran's mindset is and what they're going to go through, to help companies better adapt their transition programs for veterans to improve veteran success after they get hired. Because, of course, that's real dollars for a construction company that hires veterans out of the military, and then that veteran fails within a year and leaves. That's real money that company's invested in that veteran that's out the window now, and they got to start all over again. And I wanted to help those companies understand why the veterans were failing and help them understand how they can help them improve.
It's just like the schools. They really don't teach kids how to balance a checkbook, or they've taken shop class out. And my son, he works for Boeing, but he wanted to, go to the shop class. He didn't have the grades to get in. And so I yanked him out his senior year. He did, we homeschooled him, went online, and he was working at the local garage and waiting tables while I was going through. And then he, first he wanted to be a auto mechanic. I said, look, if you don't own your own shop, you're going to be, you're not going to make the big bucks. And he goes, well, I'll be a motorcycle tech. He was flipping cars and working on them and bikes. And I said, look, if you're going to be a motorcycle, once again, you have to have your own shop, but you have to do it in a warm state where they're riding all year. And then we took a tour of this place called AIM, Aviation Institute of Maintenance. And it was a 2-year program. At the end, you take about a year to get your A&P license, which is airframe and powertrain. And now he's, in Charleston working on the 787 platform, working on any of the planes that come out or waiting for delivery to the airlines or whoever's going to buy the planes, or any of the planes that have come back that need to be tweaking. So he could be in the cockpit, he could be in the wheel well, but he learned woodworking, avionics, metal, all of that stuff. And I looked at his textbooks. This was, I took physics when I was in school, but, that's, lift and all that with the, aviation. But it's, and I told him too, I said, hey, listen, you're young. If you should go do the National Guard or join the Air Force or so forth. And right now he's taking his pilot's license. Boeing pays for it. And he's going to be soloing here. He's got probably about another month or so, and he'll solo. And he'll be even worth more money because he'll be a pilot as well as, he can maintain the aircraft. But I told him that he should go in the military. I said, look, you're buff, you're in shape. You'll be able to handle boot camp, Marines, Coast Guard, National Guard, Air Force, whatever. You get out, you're still young, you do your 4 years, and they'll pay for school, and you'll learn a skill. And so, but he decided to go the AIM route. And it's so true. Whether you're coming out of the military, they're teaching the wrong stuff. They're teaching the wrong stuff. Not everybody's, meant to go to college. And some of the stuff that they teach in college these days, and all universities out there, I'm not pounding on you. I'm just saying that, you take all this, people get them in debt, and the piece of paper that they get isn't worth the paper that it's even printed on. And we need construction people.
Prepare for life. It doesn't help them prepare for a job.
No,
that's absolutely. Yeah. One of the pieces of advice I give to transitioning veterans is, look, you don't think that going to school is the right answer, going to university. Now, if you need a bachelor's degree to do what you want to do, okay, fine, go do that. But a lot of even people with bachelor's degrees who come out as officers think, oh, I need an MBA to succeed in military and industry. No, you do not. In fact, it's going to set you back the 2.5 years it takes you to get that MBA. The later you start, the harder it is. So stop. Yeah. Think about what that degree is going to do for you. And if it's not going to move you forward and qualify you for a quality job, then don't do it. You're exactly right, David.
Yeah. If I had to do it over, I went to University of Denver. Like I said, I was a lacrosse hockey player. And if I had to do it over, I would have done ROTC or ROTC for you guys out there. That's Officer Candidate School. And I probably would have done my National Guard, my 1 weekend a month or 2 weekends, during 2 weeks during the year for training and so forth. Looking back, I wish I would have done that because I know I would have thoroughly enjoyed it. And but here last week I was in Detroit, and there's an association that I work with called the Retail Contractors Association, and they're very, they're in construction, so we know that we need electricians, plumbers, welders, all of these these job titles to get keep America going and building stuff. And without them, we're not going to be able to get that. So they had done some presentations on how they go into the schools and plant that seed on career day, or they'll have a day where they'll get all the local community, and they'll go play on cranes or whatever it might be. And I told them, I said, look, you got to get in there between 5th and 8th grade and plant that seed. And if you get 1 or 2 of those people to think about it, you can't do it once they get into high school. You can't do it when they're junior or senior, because they've already been brainwashed with, oh, I want to go to Florida State or Duke or Harvard, and they've got this really new student union they built and all that stuff. And that's not what it's about. I was an economics, political science major myself, but listen, I did the 5-year plan. I took a year off. I worked up in the mountains and had my pass. I was a ski bum too. But as I look back, all the things that I did, kind of molded me. And look, I'm a builder too. I build a magazine every month. I used to do it in print and paper, but now I do it digitally, but I'm a constructor, and every month when I put issue out, I built that and I'm proud of it. And so, with your book going from CO to CEO, one of the biggest things that they brought up last week during this roundtable was that even though you can get them interested, a lot of these kids, they don't want to swing the sledgehammer. They don't want to start at the bottom. They would just want to be the CEO without doing anything. And you got to know how to run a business. You have to go from the ground up, even if it's cleaning, changing the toner in the Xerox machine or cleaning the bathroom. If you learn all of those things, just like you did in your career at the Navy, you made your way up to be a captain, but you probably knew everything that submarine, how it operated, correct?
You do, yeah. You start at the bottom. You start operating systems just like the enlisted guys do, and guys and gals now, and then you work your way up bit by bit. Even when I was CEO, right? I was CEO of a manufacturing company, and I needed to understand how the assembly line worked, what the assembly line employees were going through. So I spent time on the assembly line. It would be the same in the construction industry. You spend time swinging that sledgehammer, figuring out how to do things. Now, you can't do things you're not certified for. You're not going to do electrical work if you're not an electrician. But you need to be on the ground and see, and you get the best ideas from those people at the boilerplate level, right? And that's true in the Navy as well. So, the whole point of the book is, as you're pulling, and we have wonderful electricians and mechanics and machinists and plumbers in the Navy, in the military, as you're hiring those people into your company, you need to understand kind of what they, where their heads are, what they've learned in the military, and where their dangers lie with respect to if they don't change their behaviors. For example, I've hired foremen in my companies straight out of the military that just say they were a master sergeant in the Army, and then they come into the company as a foreman, and it's in a job area that they understand well from their active duty time, but they don't learn how to change their leadership behaviors, and they treat their employees on the assembly line as they would have treated soldiers on the battlefield. And suddenly you got employees quitting right and left because they didn't learn. I say to my active duty friends, leadership is hard, but it's even harder when you're leading people who can actually quit. They didn't learn that. They haven't learned how to adapt those behaviors. And that's what the book is really about. And that's how it can help companies understand how to help their veteran employees. They're going to be wonderful employees who really do know how to embrace the suck and put up with hardship and things like that. But they need to understand how to help those employees transition successfully into the civilian environment.
My son calls me Sergeant Carter, from Gomer Pyle's days and stuff. For those you don't know out that it was a sitcom, but anyway, that's what my kid calls me. And I was really tough on him, and I wanted to make sure that regardless if he went into the military or whatever he was going to do during his athletic career, and I coached him all through. I never pushed him in anywhere, but I didn't play daddy ball either. But the bottom line was I was very hard on him because I knew when you go out into the real world, it's vicious out there. It is very competitive. Business can be rough. You got to have thick skin. And, like I said before, I always like talking to athletes as well as, military personnel, because they've gone through that. They've gone through boot camp. They've gone through all the stress. And then after they, get, placed after boot camp and they do their career, whether it's for 4 years or they go in, they're different type. They're different individuals, and especially today with kind of that entitlement, that snowflake mentality, and they might have a little rougher edges than some of the young employees. So I would imagine that happens quite frequently, where people come in and then all of a sudden they see this guy coming in from the military that's maybe is very capable, but he has a different way of doing things. And I remember when I worked for Nielsen, I kind of had that Sergeant Carter. They made me go to Dale Carnegie, so I've become more hospitable to people, but I learned a lot. in there. And
Yeah.
just over the last year, I've taken a year of digital classes, and I'm about to launch my digital agency. And the biggest thing was mindset. Get rid of the negativity and keep an open mind, because the day you stop learning is the day you should go do something else. And don't surround yourself with negative people. And people, some people, they're tough to change. I'm an old dog, but I can still learn new tricks. And one of the things is that I have humility, and I have a good story. I just wrote about it in my publisher's column. There was a guy in my class who he had done his time. I believe he was in the Army, and he was in the military, done his time. He decided, you know what, I want to go back to civilian life. And so he was on the East Coast, and he was driving out to Oregon. He had 2 dogs, clothes on his back, probably a couple bucks in his pocket. And he had been on this digital launch that I've been on over the last 6 months. And anyway, his car broke down, and we were having this big launch that evening. And he was in the middle of the rural belt in a little small town, and the tow truck driver, picked up his car. Transmission blew. It's about $2,500, $3,000, and probably one hotel in the town that he got stuck in. Anyway, but he still logged in that evening. And my leader, we call ourselves, we're in a tribe, but it's not a cult or anything. But the bottom line is that the guy leading the class just made millions and millions of dollars. He just shelled out. He goes, "Hey, Kyle, I'm sending you money. And all you guys out there, you guys should send him some money too." And I knew he was military, so I sent him some money. And but he was so overjoyed that people would help him the way that they did, and they really didn't. Everything's done on Zoom, so you haven't really met these people. He actually started to cry, and it was. I'll remember that call for the rest of my life, because here was a military guy that went through boot camp, that had done his time. We thanked him for his service, and he couldn't imagine that people were that being helpful. And being in the military, you don't want the help, you know what I mean? But he accepted it, and we know that he got there, and now he's going to be a tutor. But it was an amazing thing to see that there was actually some goodwill still left in this crazy world that we live in every day, with all the stuff that's going on, and people not getting along, and not seeing eye to eye, and all the garbage that goes on. I don't have time for it. But that call just was a feel-good moment. And it probably is just like your book, because there are those guys coming out of the military. They're very, very skillful. They can be an asset. They know that they need to get up. They know that they have to be on time. They know that they have to do things right. Practice makes perfection. And then if you get these individuals and you can get them in the right mindset, they're going to be an asset to your company. And they just want a chance to prove their worth. And listen, they've got to do some changing too. I mean, because coming out of the military, it's a different kind of lifestyle than it is for civilian life. And a lot of people in the country haven't really, experienced, being around a military person. I grew up with it. So I raised the flag every day and took it down and folded it, and, sit down meals with my grandfather, went to prep school and all that stuff. And so, I get it. And but it is an issue with, out there just finding good help. And these guys have done their time. Give them a chance. And to help them along the way to make their transition. Some will get it faster than others. Like when you got out of the Navy, and I would imagine you were a submarine captain, I presume, correct?
That's right.
So how many people were on your submarine? How many?
About 140.
Yeah, so you had 140 people that you were overseeing, everything from a cook to the guys that are driving, to weapons officers, etc. And you're driving a multi-million-dollar machine, and you're underneath the water. You got to get along. Sometimes you won't go up for air or submerge for months at a time, and you got to be able to get along and deal with people. Correct?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you go crazy if you don't.
Yeah. So coming out, as you went into, your CEO-ship, was it rough for you as well, making the transition?
It was. And of course, I didn't start out as CEO. I had to work my way up.
Right.
But but it was tough, and I almost failed early in my career. I had fortunately had somebody who decided I was worth saving, and helped me get my head on right. So, kind of smacked me upside the head and said, "You're screwing this up, Bill." And so let's figure out how you, and one of the things he said to me was, "You're too rigid, you're too military. You need to learn how to live with ambiguity." And again, I write about that in the book as well, because that's not something we military guys are good with, this ambiguity thing. So yeah, there's a bunch of ways I had to adjust my thinking in order to succeed, and eventually it all worked. And I'm so grateful. I worked for great people who spent the time necessary to invest in me and teach me. And I worked with great people, and had great people working for me, which contributed to my success. So yeah, all of that is in there, and I hope people can benefit from it, both from the transitioning veteran side and from the hiring manager side.
Yeah, and listen, it goes both ways. I mean, a military person coming into an organization, it can rub off on, a positiveness for how they've been learned and trained, and, being on time, and, keeping your bunk clean and all that kind of stuff. You might think it's trivial, but it's not, because they can take that and it might rub off on some other people. And on this flip side, they're trying to see how the civilian guys are dealing with it. And they might say, "Hey, you know what? Maybe I should be a little nicer, or maybe I need to keep a little open, mind. It's not yes, sir, no, sir. It's a little more, it's a different battlefield." And, but I know that I want to read the book. And I mean, like I said, the day I stop learning is the day I should stop, and go and do something else. So once again, we thank you for your service. And let's talk about like the last 3 years, as far as beginning of 2020, the country's just cruising right along, cranes everywhere in construction. So cranes were everywhere, low unemployment. And then boom, everything gets shut down March of 2020. And really, we didn't really know what was going to happen. Now, 3.5 years later, we're still talking about it. We're out of the tunnel, but there's still some, dips and bumps in the road that we have to deal with, whether it's a labor shortage or product shortage. Now you got inflation. And tell us kind of, what you learned over the last 3 years, as, you came out with your book and what you were thinking, and maybe, some lessons or nuggets of knowledge that our listeners out there, Commercial Construction Coffee Talk, would find interesting.
Well, the first thing I'll say is that when we were in a factory environment, right, we had several factories around the country, and as the roller coaster began, I said, "Look, we can't not work. You can't work from home. It's a manufacturing facility. You've got to be here." The people that saluted and never questioned that decision mostly were the veterans, the military veteran employees, who know that they've been in dangerous environments before. There's some risk here. We're going to figure out how to manage the risk. And from that standpoint, I had far less trouble with those who come out of the military than I had those who had never served. And we were able to keep the doors open. We never shut down manufacturing for a single day throughout that crisis. So that was point number one. Point number two, unfortunately, that could not also be said for my suppliers. I had several suppliers who shut the doors and did what the government told them to do, and believed that the risk was unmanageable. And that really started interfering with our ability to turn the crank and produce product. So that was a real issue. And of course, that convinced me that I needed a more robust supplier base with redundancy, where I had multiple, not single suppliers, but multiple suppliers for each of the critical parts. So that taught me a lesson about that. Now, the third thing is, I think that everybody's realizing these days, is the onshoring issue, where back in the day, we decided as a nation we were going to, at first it was called offshoring. Then people started using this, euphemism, right-shoring. We're going to build things where it's the most economical to build them, most of which ended up in China, right? And so a lot of that is now being undone, because we realized how vulnerable we were as a nation when so much of our raw goods or so much of our basic components are manufactured outside the United States, and these become strategic critical parts, then could affect our ability to defend ourselves, among other things. And so happily, we're seeing the pendulum start to swing back and bring a lot of that manufacturing capability back into the United States, where it belonged all along. So, I mean, we've learned a lot through this roller coaster ride we've been on, and I think we'll continue to learn over the coming years. The issue, though, is it's going to need a lot of capital investment, a lot of construction to get those, industries back in the United States, and we need to gear up our commercial construction industry for that.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more. I'll tell you, a lot of the firms that I've talked to over the last 3 years, they probably had some of the best years, during the roller coaster, and they probably would have done more business if they could have found more PMs or more superintendents, but they just aren't out there. And but they all learned a lot about their business. They learned that they could have their employees work out of their house. They could be productive. They don't waste their time at the water cooler with gossip, and they could still maintain their company culture. The commercial real estate thing, that's a whole nother story. Do I keep my office? Do I let people come out? Do I want to keep them in? I was already working out of my house. I was already virtual, so it didn't really make sense for me. I was used to it, but I came from corporate America. I was with Nielsen, and I dealt with that. But as an entrepreneur, I know I couldn't work for someone right now after 25 years of being an entrepreneur, working for myself, that I couldn't work for someone else. I just couldn't. I just kind of set in my ways the way I wanted to do things. But this whole thing, the biggest thing I think that happened over the last year is that people realized that there's more to life than just work, and there's a balance there. You really need, all work and no play makes Johnny a dull boy. That Jack Nicholson said in The Shining. So that was the biggest thing that I think I saw between people, where it was work, 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 and then as we've come through the last 3 years, a lot of people have realized that, this company's, if you're not happy, I tell people, make the change, because you only have one life and time goes very, very quick. So if you don't like what you're doing, go out and you can find another job. Believe it or not, there are jobs out there, and or opportunities, I'd rather call them. And you can always go back to school. You can go get retrained. You can start your own business. You can become a digital guy. There's so many things that you can do. But if you're not happy, don't stay in there, because it's just going to bring you down and everybody else. I always tell people right now, negativity, it's like cancer. You can't leave it, because it'll spread and it'll ruin your organization. So if you have people that are just not nice to work with, either have a powwow with them or they got to go, because the organization's going to feel just like being on a submarine. If you had, I'm sure you had issues over the years when you were a captain, that there was probably one or two sailors that were in there that either they were going crazy because they were in the tube, but you'd have to bring them in and say, hey, let's get it together here, man. We're a team. And am I right?
Yes, absolutely right.
Yeah,
more than once, absolutely.
Yeah, and so you were prepared for it as you grew, you went through, and then you became a CEO. So once again, it all goes back to that military training and that mindset. And but really that change of of balancing work and life, and getting things done. And it's been an interesting dichotomy for many people, and even like myself, I've learned more about my business over the last 3 years than I think I ever have. And I've talked to enough people where they've just said it's just been they've changed the negative, they've changed the negative into a positive, and been constructive in not only maintaining their business, but also building it and scaling it up. And every day's a battle. So if someone wanted to find your book, where would they find it? Amazon?
It is on Amazon. It's sold in audiobook format on Audible, as well as Apple Books in both audio and digital format.
Well, we'll put that link, in the description here, on our YouTube channel, as well as, for anybody out there, if you're looking for, a good read, and let's say you are a CEO, and or you came from the military, you're having issues with that transition or so forth, go online, get Bill's book, or get the audio version, and see what it has to say. And by all means, you can always, if someone wanted to reach out to you and ask you about your military career, or how you made the transition, and what's in your book and so forth, how would they make contact with you?
Through my website, WilliamToti, TOTI.com, or email me at william@williamtoti.com. Those are the two best ways to get me.
Okay. So if you're out there and you're thinking about, hey, maybe you have a daughter or a son that's thinking about going into the military. Here's a gentleman that joined up at 17 after John Glenn said, hey, you don't want to sleep in the mud. Be a Navy guy, and listen, I had a F-18 pilot that was on last week. He's in the equipment trade, heavy equipment. Anyway, I didn't know it until he came on and he told me this. So anyway, he did his mechanical engineering at Auburn, and then he joined the Air Force, the military, and he became a Navy pilot. And his dad was in the Navy and retired. And everything, he said the same thing. Everything, he doesn't miss being in the cockpit, but he made the transition to civilian life. And but the one thing he did say, he said, look, if you're taking off on every day in an airplane, an F-18 or whatever airplane you're flying in, you take off a week, you're not as good as you were a week ago. Practice and repetition, it's just like, it's so important. And he says, yeah, I want to hear that, if he's in Southern California, so he's down there by the Marine base. And anyway, he said, yeah, when the planes go over, I wish I was still back in there. It was the greatest job I ever had. I was like, in a toy, multi-million-dollar toy, but I met some of the best people that I ever met. And it was all camaraderie and teamwork. And so it kind of had and I go on these things. Sometimes people don't tell me what they've done. And here he was an F-18 pilot. And I was like, wow. And I'll tell you, Navy pilots are probably the best pilots out there, because they got to land on an aircraft carrier. And
it's hard.
And if you're going in there and it's windy and dark, you're looking at a couple of lights and a little piece of landing strip, and you're in the middle of the ocean. It ain't easy. I said, you got to have a special breed to be a Navy pilot and land on an aircraft carrier at night in bad weather. It's got to be dicey. You got to be calm. You got to be confident in yourself, and you got to believe that you can get it done, and that technology will work, and that your hook will get it, And so anyway, it was really, but I didn't know, he didn't know me because he didn't put it in his bio, and there it was. And so, like I said, the military, it's got a place in my heart. So listen, if anybody wants to get me, you can reach me at davidc@ccr-mag.com. Listen, Captain Toti here, he got on, his publicist sent me a thing on his book. I looked at it. I didn't even go back to the publicist. I just went on his website and sent him a note. We talked, and here he is on, pitching his book and telling his story. So once again, we look at everything. So if you've got a press release, could be on a new personnel, your anniversary for your company, a charity golf tournament, you got a new product that you came out with, send it to us. We look at everything. We post stuff all day long. We get millions of people that come to our site every month, consuming content. We're a destination point. We have basically all sorts of content on there and they're quick reads. But let me be the judge. Send it to me. And I always say, if you don't buy a lottery ticket, you can't win. If you don't send me something, I can't publicize it. It's very tough to get in the magazine, but we have all these other social media platforms that we can get onto. And just like Captain Bill, if he didn't send me the publicist, he wouldn't be sitting here, telling his story. So send me something. We'll post it. We send you the URL. You share it. It's good for your SEO, which is search engine optimization. That's how, you get found on Google. And, it's a win-win. So let me be the judge, and I'll come back to you. I really will. I look at everything. I control what goes on there. And I like looking at everything. So send me something. We'll put it up there for you. So Captain Bill Toti, if there was one positive thought or phrase that you'd like to leave with our listeners before we sign off, what would that be? What would you want to leave them with?
Well, this is going to be mostly directed at the veterans, transitioning veterans, but a lot of times when you're on active duty, you work and you work and you work and you work, and you never see the progress. You never see the outcome of all your efforts. And one of the great things after I tell people your second career in industry can be just as rewarding as your career in the military. One of the epiphanies I had was, holy cow, I'm seeing the product. I'm seeing the results of my effort come off that assembly line. I'm seeing that building go up that I'm working on, that we're constructing. The positive experience of actually seeing the fruit of your labors appear right before you during your time working, not some 10 or 20 years down the road, is very, very rewarding. And so I just really encourage folks to make that transition at the right point in their career. I
totally agree. And, as a digital guy, I nurture my business, my business page with quotes and every day. And I just put this one up. I'll leave you with two. One is, be a warrior, not a warrior. Okay. Because worrying doesn't get in. Some things you can't control anyway. So, why not give it your all, do your best, and, and you'll probably be that much happier. The other one was, just do it and then do it again. Okay. Call to action. You'll be so happy if you want to make a change, or you want to do something different. A year from now, if you do it today, a year from now, you'll look back and say, I'm psyched that I did it. Just like Captain Toti did when he said, you know what, I'm going to the Navy. At 17, he had a call to action and he actually did it. So, and now today he can talk about it because he's had that year experience, and as well as, making his way up to be a CEO of a company. Just, go with the flow and have fun and, stay positive. So this has been, I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Once again, thank you for your service. And a couple things before I leave, before we sign off. If you're out there on the construction site, we want you to be safe. Okay. And we want you to get home, see your family, your dogs, your wife, your kids, and so forth, and be able to go do it, the next day. Safety, number one priority. Number two, it's still hot out there, even though there's no humidity out here. If you're out there on the construction site, look, drink lots of water. Here's my little electrolytes. Make sure you stay hydrated, because being dehydrated, you get headaches. That's when mistakes happen, and we don't want any of that stuff happen. So trust me, even as a coach and athlete, stay hydrated. Hydration is the number one thing. So be safe, stay hydrated, and you'll be able to come back and do it the next day. So that's my last thought. And finally, if you like this episode, hit the like button. We want to get the algorithms, and so people can find Captain Toti's story and get his book, and find out what he has to say in there. So hit that like button. We thoroughly appreciate it. So Captain Bill Toti, pleasure meeting you. I look forward to, maybe one of these days, if I'm in your area, I'd like to meet you, personally. You'll be able to shake me hand because, you're in your sling now, but you'll have your rehab done on your rotator cuff and it'll be healed. And any final thoughts before we sign off?
No, I appreciate being here. Thank you, David.
No, pleasure's all mine. And once again, thank you for your service. And I'm going to sign off here from Sugar Hill, about 25 miles out of downtown Atlanta, just below the Beaufort Dam on Lake Lanier. And have a great rest of the week. Enjoy Q4. Before you know, it's going to be Halloween. I know all the neighbors got their Halloween stuff already up. You got Halloween, you got Thanksgiving, and then Hanukkah, Christmas, and then boom, this year's going to be over and we're going to be in 2024. So, and all of you out there, finish strong with momentum, and you're going to have an unbelievable 2024, because 2023 has been a wild ride. I mean, every day I'm just mentally drained. I catch a couple Z's and I do it over again. And before you know it, it's going to be here. And then we're going to have this discussion next year. So with that said, to everybody, we will see you next time on another episode of Commercial Construction Coffee Talk. Captain Bill, You're the man. I appreciate it. Pleasure meeting you.
See you, David.
Thank you.